Okay, so this week's parsha is Parsha Shelach, and what I'd like to do is study the first Aliyah, which is the discussion of Moshe Rabbeinu sending Miraglim to search out the land of Canaan, and very clear to me that there's a couple of major textual oddities right from the very beginning. First of all, the discrepancy between this week's parsha, where Moshe Rabbeinu says Hashem told Moshe to send out the Meraglim, to send out these people to scout out the land, and the version in Devarim where it says that that the people came and asked Moshe to send out these people to scout out the land. Secondly, even though this scene is typically called the scene of the Meraglim, the scene of the spies, it's very clear that these are not spies like Mossad agents, because these are people of tremendous, they were very distinguished people, and so therefore nobody's going to send out distinguished people to be the Yamam, to be the Mossad. So what I'd like to do now is look at some of the classic Hasidic commentaries to see how they interpret the first Aliyah. But before we get to that, I want to focus on one specific verse which we raised as a question yesterday in our Rashi study, which every day we do the Rashi study, a half hour for Mincha, 6:25 this week. We said that Moshe Rabbeinu, it says in the verse, in chapter 13, verse 16, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu called Hosea ben Nun Yehoshua, and that Moshe called Hosea and changed his name to Joshua. He added a yud to his name. And Rashi says that the reason is he prayed for him to be saved from the counsel of the spies. Why did he have to pray for him to be saved from the counsel of the spies at this point? Because Moshe saw that he was going on a very dangerous mission. So we asked the question, well, why did Moshe think it was necessary to pray for Joshua at this point? Did he suspect that these people were going to that these other spies were going to go in the wrong direction, then why did he send them? So therefore, I want to focus on this pasuk, and I have here in this tremendous work, the Turei Torah. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 11 Hasidic explanations, or 11, not necessarily Hasidic, but 11 mystical explanations, going from the Baal HaTurim to the Mei Shiloach, to the Sakashavar Rebbe, to the Mendel of Rimanov. So we'll see some of the classic explanations of this verse. So let's start with the Baal HaTurim. Vayikra Moshe ben Nun Yehoshua. Why did Moshe change Joshua's name? And why did he change it at this specific point from Hosea to Yehoshua? So Rashi, the Baal HaTurim says, "Lefi pshuto, lekach shina shemo, ki haya sar tzeva b'milchemet Amalek, minit parsem shemo." And so the reason why, according to the Baal HaTurim, he gives a very creative explanation. Why did he change Joshua's name? Because Joshua, he says, according to the Pshat, which the Baal HaTurim almost never says, because Baal HaTurim is not giving a literal explanation, he's giving like a deeper mystical. He says that according to the literal reading, Joshua was the general in the fight against Amalek. And he defeated Amalek. And so therefore, everybody knew about Joshua's great strength in defeating Amalek. So therefore, Moshe changed his name so that they wouldn't recognize him. So he changed his name from Hosea to Yehoshua so that they wouldn't recognize him. That's the explanation. That's an explanation of the Balaturim. The Chasam Sofer asks a different question. He says, normally, here he says the word is Vayikra Moshe Hoshea bin Nun Yehoshua. Moshe called Hoshea bin Nun, but normally the way we refer to somebody would be Hoshea ben Nun, Hoshea the son with a segel as opposed to a chirik. The vowel is different than it is throughout the rest of the Torah. So why is that the case? Why is the vowel different here? So the Chasam Sofer tells us the following. He quotes the Jerusalem Talmud, which tells us in Sanhedrin 82, Halacha Vav, chapter 2, Halacha Vav, that Tana Rebbe Hoshaya taught. Interesting, the one who teaches this is Hoshaya, which is very sound. It sounds a lot like Yehoshua. It's just they put the Yud Hey at the end. So I'll get to your question in one moment, Bruce or April. I just want to finish this teaching on the Chasam Sofer, then we'll get to your question. That Ola Yud Shenatal Misara Imenu, that Sarah's name had originally been Sarai, and God took that Yud from Sarai and changed it to a Hey and made her name Sarah. So that Yud was floating around in the heavens. And that Yud that God had taken from Sarah came and spread out on the floor before God. And the Yud said to God, Master of the universe, Akartani minatzadekes azos. The letter Yud said, you ripped me away from this righteous woman, from Sarah. And you ripped me out. You ripped me away from this righteous woman. So God said, Selecha, l'sha'avar hayita natun b'shem nikeva u'b'seif teva. Chayecha shani notencha b'shem zachar u'b'rosh teva. He said, don't worry, I'm going to give you something better. I'm going to move you from Sarah, who's righteous, but I'm going to move you to a great man whose name is Joshua, and I'm going to move you from the end of the word to the beginning of the word. And Hachiyu Dechsev Vayikra Moshe Hoshea bin Nun Yehoshua. That's why Moses called Hoshea Yehoshua, because he took the letter Yud that had been floating around in the sky from Sarah's name, and he placed it at the beginning of Joshua's name. Yotzei, the upshot is this, that the Yud of Yehoshua is really the Yud of Sarai. So now we have a question, says the Chasam Sofer. We have a question. It can't be, because the Yud of Sarai has no vowel on it, because the vowel is under the Resh. And the Yud of Yehoshua has two vowels underneath it. It's a Shva, so there's two dots. So therefore, where are we going to get these two dots? So therefore it says, bin, with a chiruk, in a place of a segel, because we took those two dots from ben, and we stuck it under the Yud of Yehoshua. And that's the two dots. That's why the Yud of Yehoshua has these two dots, because they took them from the ben of the segel. A very creative explanation of the Chasam Sofer. I don't know how he could possibly have come up with that. It's such a brilliant explanation. Okay, wait, let me just pause here, because I see. Okay, so now we go to the commentary of the Ishbitzer Rebbe on this pasuk. Vayikra Moshe Hoshea bin Nun Yehoshua. I just want to say, I see Rabbi Yosef joined. Rabbi Yosef, I want to just tell you, you missed something. The Chasam Sofer says, where did they get, why is it bin and not ben? Vayikra Moshe Hoshea bin Nun Yehoshua. And the Chasam Sofer says, they needed, even though they took the Yud from Sarai, we needed the vowels for Yehoshua. We needed the two vowels of the Shva, the two dots. So they took the two dots from the segel of Ben and put it under the Yud of the Yehoshua, and that's how you get Yehoshua, and now it became Bin. Hoshea bin Nun Yehoshua. Okay, so now we go to the Ishbitzer Rebbe. The Ishbitzer Rebbe says that Ha'ot Yud Romezes L'Tmimus. The letter Yud hints to perfection. Why? Because this is the smallest letter. The smallest letter of the alphabet is the letter Yud. By the way, the letter Yud, there's many theories about it, and one theory is that every single letter in the alphabet contains within it also the letter Yud. And so therefore, Moshe added the letter Yud because this is based upon, says the Ishbitzer, it's based upon the Gemara in Kedushin. It says, if a person says, let's say a person, Ruvain, says to his agent Shimon, go and betroth that woman, let's say Sarah, go and betroth Sarah for me. I want you to be my representative, and I want to marry her, and I want you to go and effectuate that marriage. And then Shimon gets this, and he goes and betroths that woman. She's betrothed to Shimon, not to Ruvain. But even though he's done this, so she's ending up being betrothed to Shimon, but Shimon has acted in a deceptive manner. So therefore, in this case too, says the Ishbitzer, there was some room here to suspect Joshua and to say Moshe sending him out to scout out the land. And in the end, it could be that Joshua is not scouting it out for Moshe, but for himself, because in the end, Moshe doesn't go in, only Joshua goes in. And then it would look like his agency was not done with purity, meaning to say it could look like Joshua had his own agenda, because in the end of the matter, Joshua went in and not Moshe. So therefore, Moshe added the letter Yud to emphasize that Joshua was pure. And Joshua did this with tremendous purity of thought. So and this is how Yonasan ben Uziel, the Metargim, the translator, translates it, that when Moshe saw Joshua's humility, he called him Hoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. When Moshe saw how perfect Joshua was. So again, let me just repeat this explanation of the Ishbitzer. He connects it to a Gemara in Kedushin that says, if one person, let's say there's a person who appoints an agent to go and arrange a marriage with him with this other woman, and the agent goes and takes her for himself, that she's ending up being married to the agent, but the agent acted in an improper manner. So we could compare that scene to here, because Moshe was the one who was sending Joshua to scout out the land, and in the end, Joshua goes in, but not Moshe. So we might have suspected Joshua of being deceptive or arranging the whole thing so that Moshe doesn't go in. So that's why we're told that Joshua acted with purity. And the letter Yud, because it's the smallest, represents purity. And this is why the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, one of the earliest translations of the Torah, translates it when Moshe saw his great humility, he changed his name from Moshe ben Nun to Yehoshua. So that's the Meshuach's explanation. The Menachem Mendel of Rimanov gives another explanation of this translation of the Targum Yonasan. When Moshe saw the humility, he called him Joshua. So Rashi says that Moshe prayed on his behalf. It's Palel of Moshe prayed on his behalf. Hashem should save you from the counsel of the spies. And the Menachem Mendel of Rimanov, the Rimanover, says it should really be the opposite. If he was really so humble and so righteous, nobody needs to pray for him. If he's so humble and righteous, when Moshe saw his great humility, he prayed for him. It should be just the opposite. When Moshe saw his great humility, he shouldn't have needed to pray for him. He was such a tzaddik. Why is he praying for him? That Hashem should save him from the counsel of the righteous. If he's such a tzaddik, why does he need Moshe to pray for him? So this is a very, very powerful explanation. That this is a very, very powerful explanation, a very important explanation that everybody should hear. Very, very important. Are you trying to ask something, Gray? If you are, I'll pause. Okay. So the Rimanover says like this. There are two types of tzaddikim in the world. There are two types of righteous people. There is somebody who is righteous and humble, and there's somebody who's strong and a warrior. Meaning to say, there's a tzaddik who's very a fighter, and a tzaddik who's very humble, and not necessarily a fighter. Two types of tzaddikim. There's a tzaddik who stands at the gates and wages a war with all of his strength with those people who are false leaders, like the righteous prophet, like the Jeremiah. And there's a tzaddik who, from his great humility, just secludes himself in his hides in his corner, and he says, "Who am I? Who am I? What am I? Who am I to argue?" So Moshe saw the humility of Joshua. He was worried. Moshe was worried. Maybe at this fundamental turning point in life, this where you have to put your hand on the button and press the button and take a stand, maybe Joshua will be lacking the strength to stand up against the people the negative voices in the room, who will say negative things about the land of Canaan. And Joshua maybe will be too humble to stand up. And so therefore Moshe prayed, Hashem should save you from the counsel of the spies, that you will be strong and you will be mighty with your and overcome your natural tendency for humility and stand up and speak out against the spies. So what does it mean? Why did Moshe pray for him to be saved from the counsel of the spies? Because he saw Joshua was by nature a humble person, a deferential person. Therefore, he prayed that he be the one to stand up here and have that strength within him. So therefore, Moshe, because he saw that Joshua had this quality of humility, he was worried that he would fold and be deferential to the other people there. That was why Moshe changed his name from Hosea to Yehoshua. Now we go to the Sakachover Rebbe. The Sakachover says, basically the Sakachover really says the same thing as the Riminover. He says the nature of the humble person is to cancel his own opinion, to negate his own opinion in the face of a different opinion. And so therefore, he needed to be strengthened and saved. So another explanation from the Orach L'Chaim. So he talks about humility in this context. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he saw his humility, he prayed for him. What does that mean? That true humility is not seen and is not recognizable. Anava, humility, is the only mitzvah that if you have intent, you destroy it. Meaning to say, if you try to be humble, you've taken away the humility. What a concept. If you try to be humble, you've taken away the humility. Humility is the only mitzvah you cannot do with intentionally. You can't intend to be humble. The true humble person doesn't know and doesn't recognize that he's humble. Meaning to say, this quality of being humble is something he feels so much so that nobody else could even see it. So therefore, when Moshe saw his humility, that's the emphasis. Meaning to say, he saw that his humility was visible. He says, oh, he's not humble anymore. He says, maybe he's not in his completeness and perfection. This reminds me of like the person who walks around saying, I'm so humble, I'm so humble, I'm so humble. That's a person who's not humble anymore. So therefore, Moshe saw that he thought that Joshua thought he was acting with humility, but the truly humble person never acts, never knows that they're being humble. They just are humble. You can't try to be humble. You can't try to be humble. That's a very powerful idea. That's from the Orach L'Chaim. Okay, now the Panini Torah says, how do we explain this phrase from the Targum Yonasan Ben Uziel, that when Moshe saw the humility he called Hosea Joshua. He says, it means when Moshe heard about the humility of Joshua, he was concerned that maybe this will prevent him from being able to fight with the spies. Because the way of the humble person is to stand on the side and don't get into a fight, even when the struggle is existential. And this is the explanation. When Moshe saw the humility, when he saw that humility is able to be destructive, Moshe called him Yehoshua, meaning Hashem should save you from the counsel of the spies. Hashem should place within you strength and measure that you're able to fight against the spies. Because even though humility in and of itself is a good quality, sometimes you need to destroy humility and to reveal the strength and the spirit. So, and then he quotes the passage from Penina Torah, quotes the Gemara from Gittin 56b, Anvatanuso Sharab, or 56a, Anvatanuso Sharab Zachar, or maybe it's b, Anvatanuso Sharab Zachariah ben Avkulas, I think it's 56a. The humility of Zachariah ben Avkulas, Garmal Churban Beis Hamikdash, destroyed, caused the destruction of the temple. I'll just talk about that for a moment. But anyway, the Penina Torah is saying that he saw that the humility of Joshua needed to be destroyed. What was the humility of Zachariah ben Avkulas that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash? The Talmud says the humility of Zachariah caused the destruction of the temple. How so? Because the Gemara tells us about the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. Now, when Bar Kamsa was embarrassed at the wedding, when Bar Kamsa, this is the destruction of the temple, that Bar Kamsa went to a wedding and he was made to leave in front of all the rabbis. And he said, because the rabbis were there and they did not object to my being thrown out, I'm going to lay a trap for them. And he went to the king of Rome and he said to the emperor of Rome, send me an animal so that I could sacrifice it in the temple, and you'll see that the Jewish people will reject your sacrifice. And he made a blemish on the cataract in the eye of the animal, which was something that the nations in the world don't view as a defect, but the Jews did view as a defect. So they said, we can't sacrifice this animal. And so he was going to go back and show that the Jews rejected the emperor, and this would cause the emperor to wage a war against the Jewish people. In this context, the rabbis of the time said, well, let's kill this Bar Kamsa so he can't go back and cause us to get into a war with the Romans. And Zachariah ben Avkulas said, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. He said, first he said, let's bring it anyway for the peace of the, in order to make peace. And Zachariah said, no, we can't do that because people will think that anyway, you can always bring this type of animal and say, well, let's kill this person. So Zachariah said, no, you can't do that because then people will think that the punishment for bringing an animal with a blemish is death. So basically, Zachariah ben Avkulas was too afraid to make a stand, to make a legal stand and solve the matter and figure out a legal solution to the problem. And that's why the Talmud says the humility of Zachariah ben Avkulas caused the destruction of the temple. Because if he would have made a legal stand, he would have solved the problem. But because he was afraid to make a legal stand, therefore he couldn't solve the problem. And so that's why in this context, the Gemara, the Penina Torah, and really all of the commentaries we saw till now, they're saying that this is what Moshe was afraid of with Joshua. He was afraid that because he was so humble, he was going to be afraid to stand up and to stop the spies, and he was going to have the same role in life that Zachariah ben Avkulas had, which he be too humble to stand up to the people. And so therefore Moshe tried to give him extra strength that he would have the ability to stand up, because the humility of Zachariah caused the destruction of the temple. Let me just pause for a moment, see if anybody has any questions. Okay, so no questions, we go on. So the we go to the next one, which is the, oh, hold on, let me just pause for a moment. Hold on. The Alpha Yisrael, but let me just pause. So now from the Alpha Yisrael, what does he say? He says, okay, I don't understand the question. The same question that everyone's asking. If Moshe saw that Joshua was so humble, he should have relied upon him even more. So the truth is, says the Alpha Yisrael, that Moshe was really afraid of the Meraglim. He was afraid of this group. But he thought that the people won't believe them if they speak out against entering in the land, because people will think that that was on account of the fact that they were afraid that if they enter the land, they'll lose their power. Because right now they're in a position of authority, but if they enter in, they'll lose their authority. In the land of Israel, they have the government and they have national government, so the tribal authorities will be less. But Moshe was concerned of Joshua because for sure Joshua would they would trust him so much that they wouldn't think that he was saying he doesn't want to go in because of his own personal authority. And so therefore he said that Joshua, he was worried. He was worried about Joshua according to this approach. And he was worried because everybody trusted Joshua. He was worried about him more than everybody else. That's the basic idea. And that he was concerned that he had about Joshua's believability. And if Joshua would turn, everybody would turn. Okay, now we have the commentary of the Or Chadash on Tractate Pesachim. He says as follows. He says, what's the relationship between the letter Yud and the humility? So he brings in Sefer HaYochsin, and this book of lineage states that Joshua then was 40 years old. And the Chazal say that it says in Yoma Tractate 38 that once a person spends the majority of his life without sinning, he's never going to sin. So therefore, if that's the case, Moshe didn't need to pray for Joshua. And so therefore, here's a creative answer. Once Moshe saw that Joshua was so humble, and the Gemara Megillah 27a says that the key to long life is if you're humble, you're going to be blessed with a long life. So therefore, he said, oh, Joshua's going to live more than 80 years old because he's so humble. And so therefore, Moshe was worried he still might pray. He still might fall. That's the answer. It's a very creative answer. And now we go to the commentary on, okay, so there's the figure of Rabbi Yonas and Eibeshitz. So Rabbi Yonas and Eibeshitz, they say about him, so he was the Gadol Ador, he was the leading rabbi of his generation, and he was accused by another leading rabbi, perhaps one who was not as well respected as him, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, another Gadol Ador, who accused Rabbi Yonas and Eibeshitz of being a secret follower of Shabtai Tzvi. And this became a huge controversy known as the Emden Eibeshitz controversy. If you know the professors at Yeshiva University, Professor Shner Lyman was the expert on this controversy, the Emden Eibeshitz controversy. So they say about this in relationship to this verse, states that Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz in his life, he underwent a lot of personal attacks. And they basically said that all the amulets that he wrote were really had secret messages that he was a follower of Shabtai Tzvi. And so therefore, most of the people were against him. So once they said to Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz that the people who are against you are planning to physically harm you. So that's what they said to Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. So he quoted this verse. He says, when Joshua was about to go with the spies, Moshe prayed on his behalf, and he said, Hashem should save you from the counsel of the spies. But then afterwards it states, and all the people, that it says afterwards that all the people said, let's stone them. And basically, and the people were about to stone Joshua and Caleb. But we don't find that Moshe did anything to save them. So therefore, why was Moshe Rabbeinu only concerned about the advice that he said he wanted Joshua to be saved from the words of the spies, but when they were about to attack him physically and about to stone them, we don't see that Moshe Rabbeinu prayed. And so Rabbi Yonasan Eibish had said, we see from here that you have to be more concerned about what comes out of a person's mouth than their stones. So that's the opposite of the old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. It's just the opposite. And the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu prayed that Joshua should be saved from the words of the spies, we see from here, and not from their stones, we see from here that the words of people are in fact more dangerous sometimes than their physical attacks. Obviously, physical attacks are very dangerous also, but that was the point Rabbi Yonasan Eibish was saying. I'm not worried that the people are going to beat me up. I'm worried about what they're saying about me and what they're accusing me of. Okay, so now we look at the Sefer Dvash V'Chalav, and he says as follows. He says as follows. There was an incident that came, there was a story that came to the author of the Levushe Sirad. And what happened was, that there was a synagogue, and the place next to the Chazan was wide, but very short. And it had an additional place on one side. So the person who initially had the space next to the Chazan didn't want to change his place. And they wanted to move him to the farther away place. And he said, basically they were arguing over a seat in the synagogue. This happens then, it happens now. So what happened was, the Balabushe Srad said that the Gabayim, they're allowed to move this person because we learn it from this story of the Yud of Joshua and the Hay of Sarah. Now remember, they took the Yud from Sarai and they replaced it with the Hay. So the Hay could have claimed that how did God appease the letter Yud? He said at the beginning you were at the end, and now you're at the beginning. In the beginning you were with Sarah, and now you're with Joshua. So the Hay could have also claimed, at first she was at the beginning of the word Hosea, and now she's second. But the answer is because if you stay in your place, you can't make any complaint. So therefore, he says, basically this guy had a seat next to the Chazan, but they had moved the Chazan, they moved the place of the bima over a little bit more. And this guy said, I should be able to be entitled to go next to the bima. He said, no, you have that space. You don't get to go next to the bima. That was the point that he made to him. And so that's what this is the greatness of these rabbis, that they take like a letter about a yud and a hey, and they use it to answer a question about a fight in a synagogue over the space stayed the same, but the chazan moved, and the guy said, I get to be next to the chazan. Anyway, so that's the That's the question. That's the point of that story. Okay, so now I want to share one thought from Rabbi Elimelech on this week's parasha, because Rabbi Elimelech says as follows. So this is from Rabbi Elimelech of Legends, and it's basically on pasuk Yud Zayin, the next pasuk. It says, "Vayishlach osam Moshe latur et Eretz Canaan." Moshe sent out these spies to scout out the land of Canaan. And he says, Vayomer Aleim. Moshe said to them, Alu Zeba Negev, go up in the south, Ureise Va'alisem Esahar, and go up the mountain. Now, verse 18, Ureisem Esaharetz Mahi. You should see the land and see what it is. And the people that are living on it, Echazaku Arafeh, are they mighty or weak? Hama'atu Umrav. Are they many or few? So what does Rabbi Elimelech say? So he quotes, it's a strange phrase. It says, Alu Zeba Negev, go up into the south. Now really it should say, go down into the south. Why does it saying go up into the south? It's an unusual phrase here. Rashi says that it's because you first show people the worst part. But the Rabbi Elimelech, and so therefore saying, we'll show you the south first. But Rabbi Elimelech quotes that Aluza Negev, he quotes the Gemara in Baba Basra, which we're going to get to, God willing, very soon. We're finishing the tractate of Mitzvah on Wednesday, God willing. And then we start Baba Basra on Wednesday night, Thursday. There it says, Harotze sheyachkim yadrim. If a person wants to become wise, he should go to the south. Meaning to say, that's why it says, you will go up if you go to the south. And then you go up the mountain. Meaning to say, when you arise, when you reach a higher level of the highest level of wisdom, and then you see the land. What does Rabbi Elimelech say that means? It means you see the physicality and you see mahi. You see what value of nothingness is there in this world. Meaning to say that Rabbi Elimelech reads this whole verse as a way of giving us direction in our lives today, not just a verse telling the scouts what to do. He says, I'll just read it directly. If you want to become wise, if you want to become wise, meaning to say the Negev refers to somebody wants to become wise, goes south, meaning to say if you want to become wise, then climb up the mountain, means they go to a high spiritual level and look out at the earth. Look out at the land beneath you and say, what is it? It's nothing. That's what you're wise. That's how you're wise. That's what Rabbi Elimelech is saying. If you want to become wise, you look at the earth and you'll say, this is all nonsense. I'm saving myself for the tremendous spiritual value. So, okay, we have a time for a couple more vorts. So he'll say from the first, from the beginning of the portion. So since we cited the Ishbitzer, we should cite the Kotzker as well, the Ishbitzer's teacher. He says, so going back to the very first verse of the parasha, that it says, Shelach lecha anashim, send for yourself men. So why does it's a strange expression, send for yourself men. So it says the Kotzker, Shlach es anoshim mimcha. If you want to become close to God, say miskeret basar v'dam. Send out your manliness from yourself. Go out from your flesh and blood. Become spiritual. He reads a verse like that. And okay, so now we have I guess we'll do this one more. So this is from Yisrael Morgenstern of Pilov. He says as follows. The first Rashi on the parasha is, what's the relationship between this passage of the Meraglim and the last passage in the Torah, which was the passage of Miriam, the passage of Miriam speaking about Moshe's wife? And Rashi says that the relationship is that the Meraglim did not take Musar, they didn't take rebuke from what Hashem said to Miriam, that Miriam was punished because she spoke badly about Moshe, and the Meraglim should have seen the danger of bad speech. So the Gemara says, so the Rav Yisrael Morgenstern asked the question. This is difficult. Is the verse just trying to teach us how wicked they are, the just the full extent of their wickedness? So no, he says it's coming to teach us a very deep idea. Somebody who does not want to see the truth, it will never help him. If a person doesn't want to see the truth, you can't convince them of the truth of a matter. Because a person has covered up their eyes from seeing and they'll never see. You can't convince somebody. I actually think you can never convince somebody of anything in life. But fine. So if a person covers up his eyes, he won't be able to see the truth. And so that's the point here. These wicked people they saw exactly what happened. They saw the entire story with Miriam play out. They didn't see it. They didn't hear about it. They didn't learn about it from a text. They didn't learn about it in their history class. They saw with their own eyes, and they still did not take rebuke. They didn't learn from it. And this, by the way, truer statements have never been said in life than this. People see, I actually feel like this, like we're seeing this. People see with their own eyes. We see with our own eyes, and we just don't learn from it. People see with their own eyes what happened on certain dates in the past year or 2 years, 3 years, and all of a sudden we deny it. People see with their own eyes, and we don't learn from it. Don't learn from it. Okay, we'll stop the recording here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address.